Facebook, but it's not really my thing to try and be that big. So.
Next question?
Yes. Got it. Microphone. Yes, you speak into them. My first question is for Brian. I served on Jake's cabinet, and my specialty was transportation. And so when you mentioned that there wasn't anyone working on a shuttle back and forth, that it fazed me a little bit. And then my question for you is, there's a lot that goes on with student government. And the student body president serves on a lot of councils, and there's a lot of things that you need to know going into it, like the fact that there is no cabinet on exec. Cabinet doesn't sit there. They're separate meetings, and the reason of that is so that they can meet with VPF, VPO, and some other members as well. My question for you is, because you've no experience with this system, how are you going to account for that?
So I would argue that we do have experience with this system through our involvement with other organizations on campus. We've interacted with student government leaders. We've met with everyone on exec this year, and we've talked to senators to get their perspectives. We understand how the organization works, and I don't think that's the biggest drawback. Every year we elect the same type of people, and clearly there are things that we need to change internally, and I think Amanda and I bring that much needed change in perspective. To answer your question about transportation, we've already started to build those relationships with parking and transportation. We sat down, we talked with Michelle Porter, and she told us up front that there hasn't been a student there to spearhead this initiative. So in order to get the Super Shuttle running, you need the student body support of that. The Super Shuttle calls parking and transportation around 3 days before high traffic times like breaks, and because the Super Shuttle wasn't advertised early enough, they didn't follow through with it. We also want to publicize alternatives, like realistic alternatives, such as Bike Pittsburgh and Vanpool, which present really good and convenient options for students, especially graduate students, where transportation is a major issue.
Also, just being in student government, even if you're in a great leadership position such as student body vice president, yes, you do need to have a lot of knowledge, and there's always going to be a learning curve. Even if you spent the last 3 years in student senate or just on JFC or any of those bodies of influence, you still have a lot to learn. And Brian and I have definitely realized that, and that's why we've been starting to make a lot of connections on campus with a lot of different people who can really teach us new things, and in addition to studying the documents, which can be found online. And we're also going to select a cabinet, as Brian mentioned earlier, that will really complement our background. So we would be looking probably for people who have had experience within student government itself, and we would definitely be sure to follow all the constitutional documents, and we'd be using our constitutional advisor and really use our resources well in order to accomplish what we need to.
Thank you. My second question is for all the candidates. I think one of the biggest issues at this school is that because people are very busy, it's very difficult to get people active. And I think one of the pitfalls that causes is it's sometimes difficult for people to be active in fact-checking in certain organizations, and I think we've actually seen that in some of the news organizations that we've had on campus. So how do you feel that you guys could have more of a, make sure there's more credibility and there's people are being held accountable for the information that's being provided through our sources?
Start at the end with Amy and Brian as per usual.
I mean, we can say we'll do our best to make sure that we're fact-checking, and we can of course let our skepticism prevail within student government. But I don't know if it's our job to be checking facts for other organizations. Of course, when things come up, then organizations need to actually have their own internal discussions and figure out how to move forward. And we can try to provide an example. But I think that meddling any further will be unwelcome and will give people a very strange impression of this office of the student body president.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem, I don't think there's a lot of malicious intent, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, but if people have the facts wrong, it's likely due to a lack of information. So stuff with better centralized info, really making a push to make sure everybody's adopting and using collegiately is going to be huge. Because if the information's there, that's fine. I mean, I think, a good example is like the Tartan a couple times this year, I posted things I don't exactly agree with about Senate. And, I write a letter to the editor and, it's very civil and we all, can have our opinions. And I say, well, I think actually we've done this in a good way or whatever. So I don't think I'm afraid or Neil is afraid, we're both writing type full, to communicate our opinions if things have changed. But I think the biggest underlying thing, no matter the group, is better centralized information is going to trickle down and make, better information kind of distributed about. And that's why we want to use our website throughout the year to really be using it as a blog, publishing updates and stuff about us, having our calendar there, during elections, having information about local politicians so we don't have a repeat of the tuition tax. Because we want to put that information out there for you to make sure it's not misunderstood.
Right, and I would agree in saying that your most powerful tool here is going to be response. Any kind of situation that involves reporting, and it's a lot of it's in all of the organizations, but reporting on an event. I know there's been a couple instances where maybe someone who's supposed to be credited for an event wasn't credited, situations like that. Writing a response, really addressing it headstrong, especially in this forum that was presented to you, is definitely going to be your most powerful tool.
I think that's something really important for student body vice president and president to do is to establish a really good working relationship with the vice president of organizations and the vice president of finances, because these are the people that are in charge of running JFC and COSO, and they're the ones who have a really good grasp on like the funding of organizations and just how organizations are run in general. And the people that are reporting all these things are people in organizations on campus. So it's really important to work with them to make sure that they have really strong committees that are going to help them in establishing ties with the rest of the student body and the people that are supposed to be reporting these facts in. And by having these strong relationships with them, that should work sort of as like an auditing system, and that's how we would make sure people are doing the things that they say they're doing.
And we also want to make sure that if news sources are coming to us asking for what the student body feels, that we are accurately representing all the groups on campus, that we're not just representing the most active groups or just the senators. And so we're going to make sure we surround ourselves with people that accurately represent the campus.
Yeah, I think basically just bridging off of that, I don't think it's necessarily our job to be supervising what's being said about this organization or that, but it's really about advocating for all organizations on campus and advocating for the student body on campus. So really making sure that like whenever a situation arises, that as the student body president and vice president, that we're making sure that whatever is being said or whatever situation is occurring, that we're leaving our emotions out of it so that we can best represent the student body at all times, because you are going to be involved in different organizations. It's easy to see things from one perspective, but it's our job to be able to see from an open perspective and really make the decision or react in a situation that's going to be not only beneficial for the party that's being accused or whatever being said, but the people that are involved on the other side are equally as part of an organization. So it's really making sure that you're advocating for both sides, and while you're building other people up, you're not tearing other people down at the same time.
Yes.
So we're almost out of time, so we have one more question, and then we're going to close.
Actually, I have two questions. The one's quick. This first one's just for Brian, and it's about the logistics of the super shuttle and how it'd be kind of expensive just for one person on the weekends. And so it'd only probably be useful for breaks. And so I was just kind of wondering about specific logistics, I guess.
Sure. So we just want to make sure that students at the end of the day have convenient and reliable ways to get around campus and get off campus. And so Super Shuttle is just one example of a group that we would use. So they're a third party that provides direct transportation from the airport to a desired location. And so if we were to implement Super Shuttle, we would be taking away money from shuttle services that might not be as used during these high traffic times of the year. Some other ideas we have are plaid cabs, so having a cab station on the weekends so that students can get off campus easily.
And how is that kind of compared to the idea of, I think it was Tartan Taxi in previous years, and
Right,
how are you going to avoid that kind of?
So it's not different at all. And I think that because we've already started talking to Michelle Porter, and because we know the people that we need to contact, like the Yellow Cab service, to get on our side, to get their buy-in, we have an advantage already because we've started doing this. And so if we were elected, we would continue this initiative at the end of this year so that students know about these options going into next year.
And then my second question is for everyone, and I want to start on this side. So start with Matt. And it's kind of a little bit of, I feel like it's been an elephant in the room, kind of dealing with, with the recent stuff that's been going on with the impeachments and a lot of the stuff that's been talked about. How do you guys kind of feel about the kind of situation that led to the current student body impeachments, and what are you going to do to kind of avoid that type of situation? And again, I'm going to start with on this side.
Well, aside from desperately trying not to be elected, I guess I would say honestly, really, my opener kind of discussed this. It really is a difficult job, and I think we really need to give people credit for trying their best in some ways. But honestly, yeah, I don't know. It's weird because looking at that, it was an interesting situation, really. Yeah, I don't know. It was tough, and I guess honestly, what I said at the beginning, which is basically about incentivizing the executive office, trying to find a more value and platform-based campaign, and try and find a system that can really deliver reasonable and realistic promises is important. So that's it.
Yeah, to follow up on that, for people who are at the impeachment hearing, and there's a quote in the tartan if you want to read it, basically, like, we have a student body constitution for a reason, and it outlines some very specific duties. And Ruth and Stephen, who is the former and current constitutional advisor, made some arguments about like the spirit of the Constitution, and Jake made a good argument about the spirit of the Constitution, hence the reason for the failed impeachment. That being said, I think if you are the student body president and you aren't fulfilling the duties that are in the Constitution, you shouldn't be running for this position. And it's easy to lose sight, and I understand, like, you're a senior, you have a lot on your plate, but it's really important that you don't lose your vision. One of the parts that really bothers me about the Constitution is that there's nowhere that we're like bound by anything to fulfill any of our initiatives. And I kind of agree with Matt. They're really just a token statement to get people to vote for you. I'm going to fulfill my initiatives. I'm sure that all the candidates will, but there's nothing that actually says that you have to fulfill your initiatives if you're elected. So if elected, it's probably something I would want to change. That being said, I think that open communication between the different bodies is crucial, because if Senate has an open communication with the student body president and they feel that the student body president is not doing his or her job, they're going to say something. Versus if they don't feel like there's an open communication or they don't feel comfortable doing that, we're going to end up in a similar situation. And the same applies to GSA. If GSA isn't happy with the student body president's performance and they're open and honest with him or her, they can quickly fix it. But if there's not an open line of communication, if that's not clearly established, they're probably going to move for an impeachment because that's the option that they have.
Yeah, and I think that being said, I think we also have to remember that it was a motion. It didn't actually happen. So as far as I'm concerned, we still have the same president as we did last week. So given that the state of the vote, the way that it occurred, I'm confident that like the duties are going to be held out. So regardless of if it actually counted or not, it wouldn't have passed. So I'm confident that the people that represent me currently were making the best decision for our campus, and I have to support that.